You're about to discover how China is rewriting the rules of human existence itself. While the world debated ethics, Chinese scientists were busy creating hybrid embryos, editing babies, and building artificial wombs that could end natural pregnancy as we know it. In the past decade, China has invested over $100 billion into bioengineering research. $100 billion. You heard that right. That's more than the entire GDP of Ukraine. And what they've accomplished with that money will either save humanity or fundamentally transform what it means to be human. It all started with something that sounds like science fiction: mixing human cells with animal embryos. Hybrid embryos and chimeras. Imagine waking up one day to find out that scientists had injected human stem cells into a monkey embryo and let it grow. That's exactly what happened in 2021 at a research facility in Kunming. Chinese researchers, working alongside American collaborators, created the world's first human-monkey hybrid embryos. They survived for 19 days before the experiment was terminated. But here's where it gets even stranger. You're not just looking at a single experiment gone rogue. China has been systematically creating chimeras for years. In 2019, scientists at the State Key Laboratory of Stem Cell and Reproductive Biology grew human pig embryos in surrogate pig mothers. The goal? To create a living factory for human organs. Your heart, your kidneys, your liver, all grown inside an animal, ready for harvest when you need them. The Chinese Academy of Sciences didn't stop there. They've inserted human brain genes into monkeys, making them smarter, giving them better short-term memory. In one experiment, rhesus monkeys carrying human brain development genes showed improved reaction times and enhanced cognitive abilities. Think about that for a moment. We're not just mixing cells anymore. We're altering consciousness itself across species barriers. The international scientific community erupted in outrage. 14 countries banned this type of research outright. But China saw something different. They saw 10 million people dying every year because there aren't enough organ donors. They saw a solution where others saw a violation. And this was just their warm-up act. Because while the world was still processing human-animal hybrids, China had already moved on to editing human babies themselves. Human genetic enhancement, HIV, immune twins. In November 2018, a Chinese scientist named He Jiankui stood before the world and announced he'd done the impossible. He'd edited the genes of 2 human embryos and brought them to term. Twin girls, named Lulu and Nana, had been born with modified DNA. They were the first genetically enhanced humans in history. You need to understand what this means. He Jiankui used CRISPR technology to delete a gene called CCR5 from these babies while they were still embryos. CCR5 is the doorway that HIV uses to infect your cells. Remove the door, and the virus can't get in. These twins were born immune to HIV, completely immune. Their father was HIV positive, and he wanted to give them a life without fear of infection. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Scientists worldwide condemned him. The Chinese government disowned the research. He Jiankui was sentenced to 3 years in prison for illegal medical practices. His career was destroyed. His reputation shattered. But here's what nobody wanted to admit out loud. The technology worked. Those twins are alive today, healthy, and carrying edited genes that will pass to their children and their children's children. He Jiankui didn't just edit 2 babies. He edited the entire human gene pool forever. And while he sat in prison, his research didn't disappear. It went underground, into private labs and military facilities where oversight doesn't exist. Because once you prove something is possible, you can't make it impossible again. China had crossed the Rubicon, and there was no going back. But editing existing genes was only the beginning. The real frontier was creating entirely new life from scratch. Synthetic biology and artificial life. You're not watching scientists tweak life anymore. You're watching them write it. At Tianjin University, researchers compressed 16 natural chromosomes of yeast into a single synthetic one. Not edited, not repaired, rewritten. And it lived. It reproduced. It functioned as if nature had designed it that way, but nature didn't. That's the shift. When you modify genes, you adjust something evolution built. When you synthesize life, you decide what evolution never gets to try. China has built automated biofoundries in Shanghai and Shenzhen. where machines test thousands of genetic designs daily. No slow trial and error. No waiting generations. Code is written, cells are printed, results are measured, then rewritten again. They've engineered bacteria that produce industrial materials stronger than steel by weight, algae that generate fuel, crops that tolerate salt and drought. On the surface, it looks like problem solving at scale, but here's where it turns. If you can design organisms to produce insulin, you can design organisms to produce something else. If you can program resilience into crops, you can program fragility. The same infrastructure that manufactures solutions can manufacture vulnerabilities. Life becomes software, and software can be hacked. Synthetic biology removes the randomness of evolution. It replaces it with intention. Once that threshold is crossed, biology stops being something we inherit. It becomes something we author. And the question isn't whether new life can be built. It's who gets to decide what kind of life is worth building at all. Brain cloning and digital immortality. Death has always been the one absolute certainty in human existence. China is working to make it optional. At the Chinese Academy of Sciences Brain Intelligence Research Center, scientists are mapping every neural connection in the human brain. Their goal isn't just to understand how you think. It's to copy it, store it, and potentially transfer it into a new vessel. The China Brain Project launched in 2021 with a budget that dwarfed every other neuroscience initiative on the planet. $31 billion over 15 years. You heard that right. $31 billion dedicated to cracking the code of human consciousness. That's enough money to buy every NFL team combined and still have billions left over. Here's what they've accomplished so far. Chinese researchers have successfully mapped and replicated the complete neural structure of a mouse brain. Every neuron, every synapse, every connection. They built a digital copy that responds to stimuli exactly like the original. The mouse's brain patterns, its learned behaviors, its memories, all preserved in silicon. But mice aren't the end game. In 2023, scientists at Zhejiang University announced they'd created digital twins of human brain regions. Not the whole brain yet, but significant chunks. The hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex, areas responsible for memory and decision-making. They fed these digital brains the same inputs as their biological counterparts and watched them make the same choices. Now comes the terrifying question. If you copy someone's brain perfectly enough, if every neural pathway is identical, every memory intact, every personality trait preserved, is that copy still them? Or is it something else wearing their consciousness like a mask? China isn't interested in philosophical debates. They're building the infrastructure for digital immortality, whether we're ready for it or not, and they're not stopping at copying brains. They're preparing to connect them directly to machines. Brain-computer interfaces. Your brain generates electrical signals every time you think, move, or feel. Chinese scientists are learning to intercept those signals and translate them into commands. In 2024, researchers at NeuroCess, a Beijing-based company, successfully implanted a brain-computer interface into a paralyzed patient. Within weeks, he was controlling a robotic arm with nothing but his thoughts. No buttons, no voice commands, pure mental intention translated directly into physical action. But China isn't racing to catch up with Elon Musk's Neuralink. They're taking a completely different approach. While Western companies focus on invasive implants that require drilling into your skull, Chinese researchers have developed high-resolution interfaces that sit on the surface of your brain. Less risk, faster recovery, and easier to upgrade when better technology arrives. The People's Liberation Army has taken particular interest in this technology. Military researchers at the Academy of Military Medical Sciences are developing BCIs that could allow soldiers to control drone swarms with their minds, communicate silently on the battlefield, and share tactical information directly from brain to brain. Imagine a squad where every member has instant access to what every other member sees, thinks, and knows. No radios, no delays. Pure cognitive networking. Here's where it gets unsettling. In 2025, Chinese scientists published research showing they could detect and decode specific thoughts from brain activity patterns. Not just simple commands like move left or move right. Complex thoughts, intentions, memories. They hooked subjects up to advanced BCIs and could tell whether someone was thinking about a face, a place, or a specific word with 87% accuracy. You're not just looking at medical devices for paralyzed patients. You're looking at technology that could read your mind, technology that could enhance your intelligence by connecting your brain directly to artificial intelligence, technology that could make the boundary between human and machine completely disappear. And if China can connect brains to computers, they reasoned, why do you even need a biological body at all? Artificial wombs. Pregnancy has defined mammalian reproduction for 200 million years. China is about to make it obsolete. At Suzhou Institute of Biomedical Engineering and Technology, researchers have developed artificial wombs that can sustain mammalian embryos from conception to birth. No mother required, just a machine, nutrients, and time. In 2021, they proved it worked. Chinese scientists grew mouse embryos in artificial wombs for the complete gestation period. The mice were born healthy, grew normally, and showed no developmental differences from naturally born mice. Then, in 2023, they scaled up. They successfully gestated lamb embryos in artificial wombs for weeks, watching them develop kidneys, livers, hearts, all inside a temperature-controlled synthetic environment. But here's the part that should make you pause. These artificial wombs aren't monitored by human doctors. They're managed by artificial intelligence. The system uses sensors to track embryo development in real time, adjusting oxygen levels, nutrient flow, and hormone balance automatically. The researchers call it an AI nanny, a machine that watches over developing life with precision no human could match. China has already filed over 200 patents related to artificial womb technology. 200, you heard that right. That's more than the rest of the world combined. They're not just researching this as a medical curiosity. They're preparing for industrial-scale deployment. Think about what this means. Women with damaged uteruses could still have biological children. Premature babies born at 20 weeks could continue developing outside the womb with minimal risk. Same-sex male couples could have children without surrogates. But it goes deeper. A country facing demographic collapse could potentially grow its population without needing women to sacrifice careers or health to pregnancy. China's birth rate has been falling for years. Artificial wombs could be their solution. The ethical questions are staggering. If you can grow a baby in a machine, who decides which babies get made? What traits do they have? Who controls the technology? But China has already answered those questions, with action over debate. And once you can grow whole humans artificially, growing individual organs becomes almost trivial. Lab-grown organs and bioprinting. Every 10 minutes, someone dies waiting for an organ transplant. China decided that waiting lists are a problem that technology can solve. At Tsinghua University in Beijing, scientists have built three-dimensional bioprinters that can create living human tissue layer by layer. They're not printing plastic models. They're printing functioning organs with real human cells. In 2022, Chinese researchers successfully bioprinted a miniature human heart. It beat. It pumped fluid. It responded to electrical stimulation exactly like a natural heart. The entire structure was only half an inch across, but it proved the concept. If you can print a small heart, you can print a full-sized one. It's just a matter of scale and refinement. But China wasn't done. They moved fast. By 2024, scientists at Regenevo Biotechnology in Hangzhou had printed functional liver tissue that could process toxins and produce proteins. They printed skin grafts with working blood vessels. They printed sections of kidney tissue that could filter waste. Each breakthrough brought them closer to solving the organ shortage crisis that kills millions globally every year. Here's the scale we're talking about. China performs more organ transplants than any other country. Over 20,000 per year. You heard that right, 20,000. That's equivalent to transplanting organs for every single resident of a small city annually. And yet their waiting lists keep growing. Lab-grown organs could eliminate those lists entirely. The technology uses your own cells. Doctors take a tissue sample, grow stem cells from it, load those cells into bioink, and print an organ with your exact genetic code. No rejection risk. No immunosuppressant drugs. No waiting for someone else to die so you can live. Just custom manufactured organs built specifically for your body. China has already begun clinical trials. In 2025, a patient received a bioprinted trachea to replace one damaged by cancer. It integrated successfully. The patient is breathing normally. This isn't theoretical anymore. It's happening right now. But why stop at replacing failing organs when you could prevent them from failing in the first place? Age reversal and longevity research. You're going to age. Your cells will deteriorate. Your organs will fail. Your body will break down, unless Chinese scientists succeed in what they're attempting right now. At the Chinese Academy of Sciences Institute of Zoology, researchers have reversed aging in mice. Not slowed it down, reversed it. They took elderly mice with graying fur, failing organs, and cognitive decline, and made them young again. The technique is called cellular reprogramming. Your cells have an internal clock that tracks how many times they've divided. Every division, they get a little older, a little more damaged. Chinese scientists figured out how to reset that clock. They used a combination of proteins called Yamanaka factors to reprogram old cells back to a youthful state. The mice's fur regained color. Their organs regenerated. Their physical performance improved dramatically. In 2023, researchers at Beijing University published results showing they'd extended the lifespan of mice by 35%. 35%. You heard that right. If that translates to humans, we're talking about living to 105 instead of 75, an extra 30 years of life. But China isn't just working on mice. Human trials have already begun. The first senolytic drugs, medications that destroy old, worn-out cells in your body, entered clinical testing in Shanghai in 2024. Early results show reduced inflammation, improved muscle function, and enhanced cognitive performance in elderly patients. These aren't supplements or wishful thinking. These are targeted pharmaceuticals designed to eliminate the cells that make you old. Chinese biotech companies have invested over $8 billion into longevity research, $8 billion searching for the biological off-switch for aging. They're testing NAD+ boosters that restore cellular energy production. They're developing therapies that rebuild telomeres, the protective caps on your chromosomes that shrink with age. They're experimenting with young blood plasma transfusions, literally using blood from young donors to rejuvenate older patients. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. If China cracks age reversal first, they don't just gain a medical advantage, they gain an economic one. Imagine a workforce that stays productive for decades longer. Imagine military personnel who don't decline physically. Imagine political leaders who could rule for a century with minds as sharp at 90 as they were at 30. The gerontology research happening in China right now could fundamentally reshape human civilization. And while they work on extending human life, they've already mastered copying it. Animal cloning industry. Your dog dies, you're heartbroken. In China, you can bring it back. Not metaphorically, literally. Sinogene Biotechnology in Beijing will clone your dead pet for $35,000. They've cloned over 2,000 animals and counting. Dogs, cats, horses, even police dogs, with specialized training that took years to develop. One genetic sample, and your companion lives again. But pet cloning is just the consumer-facing side of an industry operating at massive scale. China runs the largest animal cloning operation on the planet. In Tianjin, a facility owned by Boya Life Group can produce 1 million cloned cattle embryos per year. 1 million. You heard that right. That's enough to create a cloned cow every 30 seconds, 24 hours a day, every single day of the year. Why would anyone need 1 million cloned cows? Because when you find the perfect animal, the one that produces the most milk, the best beef, the ideal temperament, you don't want just one. You want 100,000 identical copies. China is industrializing genetic perfection. They're creating herds of livestock where every single animal has prize-winning genetics. No variation, no weak performers, just optimized production. The technology has gotten so refined that cloned animals now have the same lifespan and health outcomes as naturally born ones. Early clones had problems. Shortened lifespans, developmental issues, higher disease rates. Those problems have been solved. Modern cloning success rates in China exceed 75%. They've turned something that seemed like magic 20 years ago into a routine industrial process. But it's not just about livestock and pets. Chinese scientists have cloned endangered species, the Tibetan Plateau wild yak, the Przewalski's horse, Animals on the edge of extinction brought back from genetic samples stored in freezers. They're building what they call a frozen ark, genetic material from thousands of species preserved and ready to be resurrected if those animals disappear from the wild. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. If you can clone a dog, you can clone a monkey. If you can clone a monkey, the biological process for cloning a human is exactly the same. China hasn't officially cloned a human, but they have the technology, the expertise, and facilities operating beyond international oversight. The only thing stopping them is a decision. Yet even without cloning entire humans, they've learned to replicate something almost as remarkable: human skin that heals itself. Self-healing synthetic skin. Cut your skin and it bleeds. Cut synthetic materials and they stay broken. Unless it's the self-healing synthetic skin developed at Tsinghua University. Chinese researchers have created artificial skin that can repair itself within seconds of being damaged. No stitches, no adhesives, just autonomous molecular reconstruction happening in real time. The material is a hydrogel embedded with dynamic chemical bonds. When you cut it, those bonds break. But they immediately start reaching for each other, reconnecting, rebuilding the structure from the inside out. In laboratory tests, the synthetic skin healed cuts completely within 20 seconds. 20 seconds. You heard that right. That's faster than your actual skin can even begin the clotting process. But this isn't just a cool laboratory trick. Chinese scientists have already demonstrated medical applications. In 2024, burn victims received grafts of this self-healing skin at Shanghai 9th People's Hospital. The material integrated with their natural tissue and provided protection while their own skin regenerated underneath. When the synthetic layer was damaged by friction or movement, it repaired itself automatically, maintaining barrier protection throughout the healing process. The military applications are obvious and already in development. Imagine soldiers wearing self-healing combat suits that close bullet holes and shrapnel tears autonomously. Or pilots in flight suits that maintain pressure integrity even after damage. The People's Liberation Army has funded significant research into exactly these applications. Then there's robotics. China leads the world in industrial robot production, building over half of all robots manufactured globally. Self-healing synthetic skin could give those robots something they've never had before: durability without maintenance, a robotic hand that repairs its own grip surface, a prosthetic limb that heals its outer layer after scrapes and impacts, manufacturing equipment that fixes itself on the production line without shutting down. Researchers at Zhejiang University have already gone further. They've created self-healing skin with embedded sensors that maintain functionality even after damage. The material can detect pressure, temperature, and humidity. Cut it in half, and within minutes, both pieces work again independently. Reconnect them, and they fuse back into a single functioning unit. This technology represents something profound. For the first time, we've created materials that behave like living tissue without actually being alive. And China isn't treating this as a research curiosity. They've filed over 150 patents on self-healing materials in the past 3 years. They're scaling up production facilities. They're preparing for commercial deployment across medicine, military, and manufacturing sectors simultaneously. You wanted to know about China's bioengineering advancements. Now you understand. They're not just advancing science. They're rebuilding the biological rulebook entirely. Hybrid embryos that grow your organs in animals. Edited humans immune to diseases. Synthetic organisms designed from scratch. Digital copies of human consciousness, brains connected directly to machines. Artificial wombs that grow babies without mothers. Bioprinted organs manufactured on demand. Therapies that reverse aging itself. Industrial-scale cloning operations. And materials that heal themselves like living flesh. Every single one of these technologies was impossible a generation ago. Every single one is now operational in Chinese laboratories. And every single one raises the same question. Just because we can rewrite what it means to be human, does that mean we should? China has already decided. The answer is yes. The rest of the world is still trying to figure out if they should be terrified or amazed. Maybe both.